and you all are thinking about these issues and have a lot of questions. So I really look forward to your questions and learning from you and what your thoughts are as well. So I'm Jan Dell. I'm an independent engineer, and I founded my own little NGO called the Last Beach Cleanup out here in California, because I think the goal should be to get to the last beach cleanup and not have plastic pollution, you know, in our environment. My quick history is that actually I spent 35 years in the engineering and corporate sector, including going up to DuPont. I did a lot. I went up to Delaware a lot. I was based back in DC at the time, but I've done a lot of projects for DuPont around the world. And so I know Delaware and what a nice place it is. And I just think it's just so tremendous, the effort you've got going there. And also, because of the size of your state, I think you actually also have the opportunity to be influential and, you know, and pass policies and implement things that, you know, a huge state like California here, or we also have a house in Texas, because my husband's a chemical engineer too, and that's where chemical engineers work. And it's hard to get things done there. So in 2018, my job was going to change from working on clean energy. I was told in Houston that I oversaw a division for a big global engineering company. I was told I was going to have to help ExxonMobil build its new polyethylene cracker. And I said, no, can't do it. Plastic pollution over the world. I don't want to do that. And they said, no, you have to. And I said, okay, well, I guess I'm tapping out of my official career now. And I decided to become an activist, and I collaborate with all the big NGOs. I like being independent after being, you know, part of a big company for so long. But I collaborate with all the NGOs and really bring technical knowledge. And the reason I got obsessed with this idea of labeling and these false claims that things are recyclable was back in 2018, when the first things I did was I went to the Association of Plastic Recyclers conference. And, you know, to me, as an engineer who plans the work, works the plan, you know, if you look at the things in the US, holding Asia aside, and I've worked a lot in Asia, and that's another issue there. But like if you look at the US or the OECD countries, you have the top 10 lists of things on the beach cleanup every year, the same thing: food wrappers, cups, straws, right? So I think, okay, well, let's attack those. Let's work our way through those and figure out a way to use reusables or get rid of them or what have you. And so I actually reached out and started talking to fast food companies. I used my corporate contacts, but every single one replied, oh no, we don't have to stop using those. They're recyclable. And I said, no, they're actually not. Those cups aren't recyclable. No one's accepting and recycling those. Those straws aren't. These food wrappers aren't. And I went to the Association of Plastic Recyclers conference in 2018, and I saw a presentation from this group called the Sustainable Packaging Coalition, who had started to make up this little label called How to Recycle. And within the confines of really their people of the plastics industry, they all talked about, oh yeah, we're putting these labels on everything. They're recyclable. It's all recyclable. And I knew as a chemical engineer, there's no factories taking these. No one's recycling these. And so in 2018, I really started going into stores, looking on store shelves, taking pictures, collecting these things. I did a report with Greenpeace called Circular Claims Fall Flat, to prove that even though all these things are labeled as recyclable, there's no factory buying this from a MRF and reprocessing it. Unfortunately, too many people still associate, oh, if my blue bin accepts it, it gets recycled. No, it's the biggest myth of all, but the products industry, even the recycling industry, promotes this myth. And when China said, no, we're not going to take more plastic, then the rubber really started hitting the road. So in 2018, when I heard them, and I'm just a little quiet person in the back of the room, gloating about being able to put these labels on this, and I think no one's actually recycling this, I really decided to take it on as an issue. And so here we are 4 years later. We've made progress, but there's still so much to do. And this is all the learnings that I've had along the way, and I have lots and lots of props I can show you. But with that, I'm going to pull up my presentation now. When I pull this up and I put it on the screen, I don't think I'll be able to see your faces. So if you have questions, just pop right in. Okay, I'll like take a breath now and then, so that, okay, share. Oh, I can kind of see you on the side. Well, isn't that good? So I'm going to put it in full screen mode here. Can you see that okay? Can you see that, Dee?
Yeah, it's still not in full screen mode yet, though.
Oh, God, it says give subtitles a try. Why is it's not
Go to you can go to slideshow and over there you go. I think that's it.
Oh, I don't know. It may be
Oh,
doing
maybe not.
titles.
That's not quite it.
Let's see. I'm going to stop share and try again.
You have to go to display settings and change it to other view.
Okay, I'm doing share. It's not in display mode yet.
So now go to display settings.
Is that here?
Up at the top of the.
Thank you, Phil.
Thank you, Phil. Which one now?
Go higher than your PowerPoint, so where it says display settings, to the right. There, yeah, where the drop down is there, display settings. Click that.
The little drop down there.
Oh gosh, I don't see it. Where is it? Oh, display settings. Oh, okay.
No, you had it up at the top, top in the black part and the white letters. Upper left.
Mute, stop settings, security, participants, chat, polls.
Down under you, at the top of your PowerPoint, probably.
I've got one more idea. I'm going to stop share. I'm going to go put it into full PowerPoint. Oh no, I can't do that. Gosh darn it. Okay. So you guys can't see the whole thing.
So can you end the slideshow and start again?
Yeah, let's see. Am I going to get kicked out here?
Because you're using dual monitors, right?
Oh, is that the problem? I'll unplug my other monitor. Is that my problem?
Yeah.
Okay. Phil Smith, you're a smart guy. Thank you.
Try again.
Thank you, Phil Smith.
We'll get there.
Okay, share screen. We'll go here. Share. Now I put it in full screen mode. How's that?
There you go. That's
okay,
it.
Super duper. All right, thank you. I'm doing a time check. Okay, 9:14. Okay, so where we are today is that it's the wild, wild west of product claims and labels with no sheriff in town. And I started saying this last summer, and it was picked up by the New York Times. And now I see this wild, wild quest quote everywhere, and it makes me happy because it's caught on. I think it's just a really simple way to understand that no one's tracking any of these things, right? Or had been. We're starting to get some progress now, which I'm happy to tell you about. But really, up until the end of last year, there was no progress being made, but now we are. And this is really all about facts over fiction. This was actually from Bloomberg's campaign from president. I saw the t-shirts. He ended his campaign and they went on sale for like $5, and I got a bunch of them because I just love the slogan. And this is everything about the plastics and recycling world that we have to emphasize is facts over fiction, because most of what you know or have been told about recycling and plastics is fiction. So today, I'm going to hit the key points up front in case you have to leave or get off. So this looks like a dense slide, but these are the key points I'm going to talk about. Right now, companies know that consumers want recyclable packaging. So they've literally slapped the recycle symbol on everything. I have a whole garage section full of bad labels. I've been in a couple documentaries showing my crazy person collection, and I got a bunch in my office here I can show you. It astounds me how bad it is. And it's actually getting worse while we're getting some laws and lawsuits happening. It's getting worse as we're kind of getting better. So people ask, okay, so the big picture, what is the legal requirement for calling something recyclable? Well, at the national level, there's something called the Green Guides that the FTC promulgated in 2000. They're older, but the last time they were revised was in 2012. They're supposed to undergo revision this year, which is a very big deal, but I don't think they've officially started. These green guides set legal requirements for how many people have to be able to have access to put this in a bin and then have it be recycled and so on. But unfortunately, the green guides are really weak. They are so weak. They're really sort of just like guides, and there isn't much teeth in them at all in terms of enforcement. And in fact, the FTC has never enforced the green guides on recyclability claims, right? No sheriff in town. So there's weak laws at the national level and no sheriff out there going, hey, that thing's actually not recyclable. But the key points to know about this is that the FTC does say the companies are liable. They can't hide behind a third-party label and say, oh, that group told us that it's recyclable. No, the law clearly states the companies are liable. And you may have just seen that Keurig got hit with a $10 million class action. And that's the same attorney that I used for my lawsuit. I'll talk a bit about that in a minute. So the basic requirements for the federal national level, which Delaware would be under, is that number one, to look at an item, and I keep showing this. Yeah, so this is a plastic food wrapper. To call this recyclable, 60% of Americans have to have access to an established recycling system that you can put it into. So that's putting it into a curbside bin. Okay, well, this doesn't make it at all. But there's a second part. This is a second part that the product companies want to overlook, and even the recycling industry doesn't want to talk about, that collection alone isn't enough. There actually have to be markets, processors who are buying that material and make it into something to be called recyclable. In fact, there's a story that the aseptic carton industry went around paying MRFs to accept aseptic cartons to get to the 60% threshold. And then they said, hey, we're good. We're at the 60%. That's it. That's all we have to do. And these are the stories I've been told, is that then the MRFs would just trash them, but the MRFs were paid to take them by the carton industry, and then they got the recycle symbol. Well, now everybody's seeing past that, right? So this acceptance, this getting enough MRFs to just put it in the bin isn't enough. It actually has to be sorted and recycled into something else. And then another key thing about recyclability is that it can't have a shrink sleeve or something on it that a consumer has to take off if this thing makes it unrecyclable. But what are the product companies doing right now? This is completely deceptive. Is they're putting in, I don't have an example right here, but they're putting these little things that say, oh, cut off the label, consumer, then this is recyclable. And they're counting these products as recyclable in their pledges and so on. And that's not legal according to the FTC. Okay, so we did this comprehensive survey. I made a big list of all 373 MRFs in the US, and I look at what they accept, because I'm gonna do this after I went to that meeting. I'm like, I am really gonna go figure this out. What's getting accepted, and then what's the processing capacity? And so I did this in 2020, and then Greenpeace published it in the Circular Claims Fall Flat report. And what we found across the nation is only number ones and twos, this is number one, and two, that's like your milk jug, bottles and jugs meet the 60% acceptance list, and then have some adequate processing capacity. There isn't processing capacity for 60% of them, but there's processing capacity for enough of them to say, yep, they're recyclable. Nothing else made the grade. And that really made the polypropylene industry mad, because they had to actually take the recycle symbol off. They had to start adding check locally, which is a whole nother deception onto their label. So anyway, we found this, we proved this, we did the data on this, and this is really the basis for the fact that so many things are getting labeled as recyclable and they're not. And then also, they shouldn't be labeled as recyclable if they have the shrink sleeves, but the companies were doing that. Okay, so many products, many. If it's plastic right now, if it's not a 1 and 2 bottle and jug and it's got a recycle symbol on it, it's probably deceptively labeled. Why is this bad? Because people see these recycle symbols on all these things. Here's this Walmart one. This is so ridiculous. They see these big recycle symbols and this plastic tray part, which has paper on it. It says check locally. None of the MRFs want this thing. It's got paper on it. It's going to slide through. It's going to actually end up in the paper bale. No MRF wants this. And so people are going to go, oh yeah, okay, I bought my pens. I'm just going to put the whole thing in the recycle bin. It contaminates the paper bale. This bale ends up in Indonesia. There's at a big pulping mill, one of the world's largest, there's this huge stack of plastic polluting Indonesia next to the paper bale. So it really does cause harm. It's not just a silly deception issue. But the good news is that media scrutiny is increasing, lawsuits are being won. And my message to companies is it's really time to get real. This presentation actually I originally gave to a conference a couple of years ago. And my message was to corporations. It was time for you to get real about this. Okay, no more faking. And the really, really good news is that we in California got the SB 343 Truth in Labeling law passed last fall. This was a result of a policy that we recommended from the California State Recycling Commission that I'm on about truth in labeling. And it all came from just this idea of proving that all these things are really causing harm in our recycle system. Okay, so now I'm going to go to each one of those steps. Okay, so you all know global plastic packaging waste is increasing. 50 to 60% of plastic waste is from packaging, right? And it's increasing around the world. It's increasing in the US, just skyrocketing with single-use plastic. And product consumption. You might buy something like these pens, right? And there's more and more plastic packaging. Companies are actively shifting from paper and glass and metal packaging to plastic because it's so cheap. Okay, so the companies know that consumers are not happy about this. And here's a summary of some consumer surveys that were done recently in the United States. Adweek, 77% of consumers said it's the company's responsibility to ensure that their packaging is recyclable. We see this over and over again in all of these surveys. So the companies know loud and clear, which is why they're slapping recyclable symbols on everything. And they're doing it in the past without fear of getting caught. They literally could do anything. And so this first one, I've got to show you. This is recent. This is so egregious. Costco is now buying into this greenwashing game with these how to recycle labels where you've got, I had to buy this because I have to use it as a prop. Otherwise I would never buy it. This package for $9.99, you get these polystyrene 6 hard plastic plates, right? And on it, they put, for the plastic plates, a big recycle symbol. And then in the tiniest little font you can't even read, it says check locally. But someone looks at this and they go, oh yeah, recyclable. I'll throw these plates in a recycle bin. Polystyrene plastic plates are accepted almost nowhere in the country. And they're definitely not recycled. Now, I have found out, this is crazy. You're near Washington, D.C. You're not that far. The Washington, D.C. district list of what is accepted in recycling bins is probably the worst greenwashing list I've seen in my life. They actually accept this. I had an interaction on Twitter with someone that used to run the D.C. process going, oh no, we take those. You get these, recyclers that are like all, cheerleaders. Oh yeah, we said, and I Twittered, I said, well, where does it go? Oh, a secondary processor in New Jersey takes it. I'm like, well, I know there's an incinerator in New Jersey, but I've never seen a polystyrene 6. So here we've got Kirkland, Costco, selling these things like they're recyclable because they know customers care, but they're not at all. Another one, these Glad, I've got them over here on the floor, but these Glad single-use plastic, you could reuse them and wash them, I guess, although you'd probably get worried about toxics eventually. Food containers, and they're saying, yeah, this food container, this black tray, polypropylene 5 black tray and black tray is recyclable. No, it's not. It doesn't pass. Less than 4% of people have access to acceptance, and no one's taking those black trays and actually recycling them. So you can see the product companies know, and they're just slapping it on everything. And it's time for comeuppance, right? It's time for the truth to come out. Why is this bad? It's just not a fake, it's actually this kind of bad greenwashing, and it's deceptive labeling. It's actually illegal deceptive labeling. It stifles innovation. It stifles innovation.
Jan, can I hop in and ask you a question? You said we could.
Yeah.
Just to your last point, I'm just wondering, the companies probably respond by saying, but we're required to have those chasing arrows with resin numbers in them by law. As certainly in Delaware they are, and my understanding is in about 30 other states, by law they are required to have them. So there's a dichotomy there, right?
Yeah, so I'm really talking about these big labels, right? So you've got, like if we take this as an example, it's funny. Do you have Costco in Delaware? You should go look at this, because these plates actually don't have any number on them at all. So I guess they're supposed to in Delaware. So the teeny tiny little recycle symbol with a number in it is one thing. It's this egregious big labels that they're adding that people look at that is deceptive, right? The FTC says, a teeny tiny little number 1 on the bottom here, that's just a resin code. That's the national law. Now, the new California law that just came into effect removes that though. So that's going to change in California. So yes, you've still got that issue. It would, if you want a policy idea would be to go to the legislature and say, stop that requirement. Right? Stop the requirement. They can make it a triangle, at least, although that still confuses people. But when I'm talking about deceptive labeling, I'm really talking about these very big symbols, very big things that say, please recycle, the really things that are really aimed at consumers. It's really consumer advertising that they're doing. Okay? See?
Okay, thanks. Sorry, it was on mute. Thank you. That's great.
Okay, yeah. So these are the really big ones I'm doing. Yeah. So the FTC green guides right now, they say, oh, this little tiny one at the bottom, that doesn't count. That's okay, right? But those little tiny ones at the bottom often become just really big, and then it's not small anymore. The FTC says, if it says tiny little small one, that's okay. But once it becomes big and noticeable and basically an advertisement, then it's deceptive labeling. Okay, so why is it bad? This is really key, is that it's actually stopping innovation, because again, the companies know we want good packaging. But as long as they can fake and say, oh, here's an example, this plastic pouch, if they can lie and say, oh yeah, store drop off, you can recycle that, then they're never going to innovate to what Nestle is starting to do in the UK, which is good paper packaging. They have a micro coating of I think it's a mineral micro coating that does the moisture barrier. But Nestle's getting rid of plastic in the UK and going to paper. These are chocolates. This is the type of innovation we need. And I have a few other examples there. Produce coming in cardboard instead of plastic clamshells, which are not recyclable and pollute the planet. There's other things to use. Instead of the plastic 6-pack rings, not recyclable, you can use cardboard. That Kit Kat is now being sold in Japan. Again, sort of like paper packaging like this. And so, or reusables, we all love, for water, gosh, reusables is as long as the companies can fake and say something's a plastic item is recycled, but it's not. It contaminates recycled bins, and it stifles innovation to get to good things. So this, you'll have the slides in case you really want to look at it, but here's the real legal basis from the FTC, and this was in the circular claims report that I wrote. Two main things, as I mentioned before. Number one, 60% of America's 332 million Americans have to have access to put something in a recycle bin. And so the only two items that pass that on a nationwide basis are number ones and twos, bottles and jugs. But then the second part is there has to be processing capacity, right? We just don't go, oh, it puts in the bin and then magic happens. There actually has to be, factories that are buying it and turning it into something else. And our processing capacity for PET in the US is only about 23%. But that counts as enough. And then HDPE, it's less than that. It's about 15%. It's actually on the border. If everybody, actually put HDPE jugs and they all got collected, there wouldn't be enough processing capacity. But those are the two that you could say, yep, you put those two in your curbside bin, there's going to be a market for it. And then there's more rules within this. The FTC says that the companies are actually supposed to do a study first and have evidence if they put a recycle symbol on it, and that they're liable. And there can be no component that makes it unrecyclable. So we did this report, and if you're really into this topic, you can read it. You just Google circular claims fall flat. We're actually updating it right now. Probably will publish later this year. Sneak preview, it's going to be plastic pledges fall flat. So it's the sequel. And this just really showed again that only HDPE bottles and jugs are recyclable. And here's the results of it. The only HDPE bottles and jugs, PET and HDPE, across the board, we saw so many products, especially like detergent products. I wish I had brought an example to show you. That were labeled as recyclable, but then they had a shrink sleeve. And the companies know that this makes the product unrecyclable. So they put, oh, consumer, cut it off. It's really hard to take a knife and cut this thing off. Imagine, if you're a mom or dad with little kids and you're like doing laundry and you've got this empty one, are you going to go find something and take it off? No. And when you have a bad shrink sleeve on it, it makes the product unrecyclable because it actually can wreck the recycling equipment. The PET recyclers hate these labels coming in. It actually wrecks their equipment. So we saw that over and over again. Why? Because the companies want to put shiny, pretty, labels on their detergents for shelf appeal. So they're completely ignoring, really, is it recyclable? They're pretending it is and making it really fancy to try to get you to buy it. Example, I just got this at the store the other day. Del Monte is selling these orange things, and they've got a full recycle symbol here for this PP5 cup. It didn't pass at all. Only for PP5, for cups like this, it was only like 3% access. And then there's almost no processing capacity, about 1% processing capacity for PP5 in the whole country. So this label is flat out false. Okay, so here's the results. So we looked at every single item, and then we looked at the processing capacity. So all of these failed. Tubs, the coffee pods, Keurig was claiming recyclable, plastic clamshells, trays, plastic bags, everything, plastic cutlery. They're not being accepted by most MRFs, because across the country, most MRFs have gotten it and said, no, we don't have any buyers for that, so we don't want it put in the bin. I'll tell you, California is one of the worst greenwashers still, though. We've got MRFs or cities accepting lots of things, and they're exporting. They're either sending it to landfill or they're exporting. It's really sad. California is the worst about this. And then there's very little processing capacity. One of my real other passions is just trying to end all this plastic and fast food, because this is the on-the-go stuff that ends up in the beach cleanups, right? This is the stuff you're not using a Tide container at home and deciding to put it in your recycle bin or your landfill. This is the stuff that's really entering our waterways, right? We need to make changes on this. But the fast food companies are all telling us it's recyclable still, which is just so absurd. And so here's the chart, just the basic acceptance level. You're supposed to have 60% acceptance. for recycling, none of these things come close for the population. Plastic cups, it's 6%. This is 2020. It's actually gone down now, but you've got McDonald's labeling their big clear plastic cups as recyclable. Check locally. There's almost nobody taking it, and then there's no one processing it. So this is just the on-the-go plastic fast food industry is just incredibly deceptive. The little white Starbucks cup lid down there, that's actually made by a company called Berry Plastics. And I've been to a recycling conference in 2019 where they stood up and said, this is recyclable. And I went up to the person after, I said, no, it's not accepted and it's not getting processed. And he goes, well, technically it is. And I said, well, technically it doesn't count by the law, but they're still out there making the claims. Some more things that are labeled as recyclable. There's the McDonald's one. Their cups, they're saying they're recyclable. Starbucks came out with this plastic lid. Let me see. I'll go back. Well, I'll tell you about the Starbucks one in a second. Yeah, here's more examples. Greenpeace actually, so this symbol is too big. If it were tiny or on the product, it would be all right, but this polystyrene 6 on cutlery, it's too big. Look at this polypropylene 5, like this is too big of a recycle symbol by the FTC. All of these would count as being too big and as being advertisements as opposed to a small one. All of these things are labeled as being recyclable with big symbols as advertisements, and none of them are. Now, the good news is we started to get public attention on this actually in 2018, where a public interest firm took on a client to file a class action lawsuit against Keurig over the coffee pods, because Keurig is literally saying these are recyclable. I admit it, I was fooled. I got these little cutting devices. I have some here. And I was taking it apart and I was washing it all out. I was putting it in my recycle bin. I gave these little cutting devices out to my family. I put one in my mom's Christmas stocking. I'm like, Mom, use this and it'll be recyclable. I was completely fooled. I didn't know. And this is one of the great ahas when you wake up and you go, wait a second, I was fooled about this. This is insane. I want to help stop this. So they filed this lawsuit, and it took a long time, only till last fall, and it was just announced recently, to get to a settlement agreement, because Keurig just denied it. Deny. But they proved it. They proved it and said, look, you know, they're not sorted, no one's buying them, they're not recyclable. So Keurig's agreed to change their labels. When the California law comes into effect, they won't even be able to call them recyclable at all. And we're starting to get media attention. I've got my lawsuit shown down here against TerraCycle and 8 big product companies who were slapping recycle symbols on everything. Recyclable through TerraCycle, like on chip bags and so on the worst plastics, right? And I went on to register, and then I found out it was waitlisted, so that they only pay for a little bit to come back, and that's actually illegal. That was one of the big bases of the lawsuit, was that you can't claim all these products are illegal, recyclable, if the company is actually only paying to take a few of them back, right? And then as well, TerraCycle was claiming that 97% of the materials were recycled. We asked for the basis of this, they couldn't prove it. But I will say those 2 lawsuits came under California law. We have stronger laws. We essentially take the green guides and put them into place, codify them, that they're not just guides, that they're laws. So these lawsuits that you're seeing pretty much come out mostly across the US. A lot are coming from California because we have stronger laws to do that. Here's another one of critical media attention. When Starbucks came out with these plastic lids that didn't have a straw, they were hyping them as being recyclable, right? And they're not, because they're not accepted in curbside bins. They're flat, they'll end up in a paper bale. And it's PP5, no one's buying and recycling those. So Sharon Lerner wrote an article about it in The Intercept to expose it. And I will say Starbucks, I think they still have that claim on their website, but they've sort of dialed down the hype on it. So the key message when I talk to companies is that it's time to get real, okay? there's so much harm that comes from this. You're confusing your consumers. You're wrecking America's recycling systems, right? That gray bin right there, that's all that stuff in it. That's a recycle bin, and it's filled with contamination. I walk around my neighborhood on Wednesdays and take photos. Oh my gosh. I mean, all my neighbors are putting all kinds of stuff in their recycle bin. And a lot of it has, like, you know, the Amazon thing. I see these all the time. Why? Oh, there's a big recycle symbol on it, right? There's a big recycle. So I'm just going to put it in the recycle bin. So they're causing real harm. I tell companies they're liable. And as we get more lawsuits coming out with financial harms and so on, hopefully they're beginning to listen. But they're really coming from this place of business as usual of, oh, we can do anything, no one's going to catch us, to wait a second, the law is now starting to get enforced. If there's any cities or MRFs, or any cities, if you have anyone on the call today that's a city representative or knows a city representative, you just got to go back to your city and say, look, we've got to get real. We should not accept anything in the curbside bin that doesn't get sorted and then have a buyer in America. In America, this is not about shipping it to Mexico because somebody will buy it. That's what we're doing in California. It's terrible. Stuff's getting accepted in the curbside bin. It's getting trucked to Mexico. It's polluting we've shifted from Asia to Mexico, unfortunately, and Central America, from California, to get rid of our plastic waste. This is an example from Northern California, from a city. It's actually Recology, who has this great reputation. They're the waste hauler. They accept all these plastics that are not recyclable, including utensils, plastic utensils. No one wants those. No one wants to buy these things, but they're still on the list. And I go to them and I say, why? And they're like, and this city's like, oh, but we want to be green. People want to recycle. Palo Alto, the richest city in one of the richest cities in California. They have this huge list and they export their plastic waste to Asia, and they fully admit they don't know where it goes. But I'm telling them, stop, you're waste imperialists. Just stop. Just go and take ones and twos, bottles and jugs. That's all there's a market for. So the good news, more good news, is we did get this law passed in California, SB 343, where something to be called recyclable will have to pass a 7-point test. It's now in effect now, and some aspects of it are in terms of like companies having to prove things. It will really come into effect in labeling in about 2 years, because everything takes a little bit of time to get into. In that, companies will not even be allowed to use the chasing arrows anymore. We're getting the chasing arrows off of packaging so that people aren't confused. And there won't, even the tiny ones won't be allowed to be used yet. You may ask the question, well, how is a product company going to deal with that when you have California that says you can't use a chasing arrow, and then you have Delaware that says you have to? I don't have the answer to that. They might have to make 2 sets of products or stick a sticker on for Delaware. I honestly don't know. But this is really a truth in labeling law, which should help the whole country. We're 40 million people out here. We're a big market. Oregon is already hoping that, you know, our law will help them, because they agree 1s and 2 bottles and jugs are really it. So what's next? This is my last slide, and then I hope we have, oh good, we have time for talking. So what's next? At the national level, the FTC is updating their green guides this year. We have no idea what will be in it. Our California law is really going to pressure them to do something real, I think. They are going to get a lot of input from the plastics industry, the American Chemistry Council, the recycling industry that likes to pretend things are recyclable. So, but there's going to be a lot of input, and anybody can give input for stakeholders. And I encourage Plastic Free Delaware to be a stakeholder in this, to get involved in giving public comments when they come out with guides around making these things strong. It's a big job for the FTC though, because the green guides also include claims on like net zero carbon and some other things as well. So this is a big effort they're going to do this year. And then we're also beginning to see more state level legislation. Oregon did pass a law, and I've spoken with the regulators there. They're taking a little bit different approach, and they're looking at options, and I just cut and pasted in the options here. One of them is not to actually do a lot, and that hope ours will help basically change the labeling for products, at least, you know, on the West Coast, and that they can benefit from it, because we're 40 million people, and I think they're 4 million people, 6 million, 4 million, not as many. Is there any more? Oh, I'll just go back then. So that's what's moving forward. I will say that there's also probably more lawsuits to come, which is good because it takes laws. Well, I like to take it takes laws and enforcement to get things done. Unfortunately, the enforcement's not there, so it's taking laws and lawsuits to make progress. But that's the state of where we are, and now I look forward to all of your questions.
Jan, thank you. It's so inspiring and informative. So I know there's going to be lots of good questions. There have been several already in the chat. So I just wanted to maybe say one or two things, and then we'll go there. Just so everyone knows, one really cool thing, I think, when you look at California's new law is pretty complicated because they have many different MRFs. We in Delaware only have one MRF. So if we move forward with the truth in labeling legislation piece, it can be a lot more simple. We don't have to have all the they have to compare all their different MRFs and who's recycling what and what percentage and all the different MRFs and everything. We wouldn't have to do that. So it would be much simpler in Delaware, and just, to clarify for everything. And there's probably is some difference between what's going on out in California and what's going on in the East Coast in terms of what is exported and even some of the markets. So I don't know if Jan can talk more about that, but
yeah. So, this is actually one of these myths that needs to get busted. And I think it's the recycling industry promoting it, as well as the products industry. They say, oh, there's 9,000 different acceptance lists. It's all checked locally, it's all different. No, it actually isn't, okay? Because what you really want to look at is who are the plastic processors buying plastic to recycle it, okay? Forget the MRFs, you've got consumers here, right? And then there's MRFs, and then there's markets. Okay, there's only markets nationwide for 1s and 2s, bottles and jugs, and not green, by the way, not green PET. There's no national market for that. And then there's a little micro market if you're close enough to one factory called KW Plastics down in Alabama that recycles about 1% of America's polypropylene. So if you're near enough that one, there's a market for polypropylene. But nationwide, for looking at US factories, it's 1s and 2s, bottles, and it's literally, that's it. There are no other factors. No factory doing a 3, a 4. Plastic films, bags, we could get into that on a whole different story, because I know you guys still have a take back law, but that's a complete fraud on the West Coast. And I even question.
And they can't go in your curbside. So it's not.
Yeah. I'm sorry, I've got the gardeners here today is making a little noise. So there isn't all these local, we put it in our bin and someone takes it and does something. Nationwide, it's 1s and 2s, bottles and jugs. And then there's a micro market for PP5 down in Alabama. But then this even gets a little bit more complex, because in like Florida, they take a lot of plastics in the curbside bin, because that goes to a MRF where they pulls out 1s and 2s, bottles and jugs, and then the rest of the plastic goes next door to the incinerator. So the plastic's purposely being collected, so it's on the acceptance list, right, to be burned, because burning plastic is great energy. So you've got places like that are purposefully accepting it, and you could say, oh, it's accepted for recycling. And they're actually promoting incineration in Florida now. So this component of looking at who is actually buying it, where is the plastic processing facilities, I know where they all are. I know every single one in the United States. Actually, I've got a list for the whole world. And it's only 1s and 2 bottles and jugs with a little bit of PP5 in one place.
So I have a question. This is Debbie. Whoops, am I unmuted? Can you guys hear
me?
I can hear you. Yeah, so question for you, Dee, or somebody else. Do we know in Delaware how much of our stuff that's going in our blue bins is actually getting recycled versus incinerated? Are there any numbers? I mean, you said, we obviously only have one, we have, I guess it's DSWA or whatever, but I mean, how much is actually getting recycled?
Well,
Or how much they say is getting recycled?
Yeah, they would, it's a shame they're not here today. Maybe I should have put them on a panel with Jan and they could have duked it out, because I think you'd get a very different perspective from them. So it'd be interesting, you know, it would be interesting to have them both on a panel together. And, you know, I think the DSWA does put out a report every year, you know, about how much of all the different categories of waste are getting recycled and diverted from the landfill. So I think Jan's point is largely, you know, that we need to question some of those numbers and really question where they go after they go to, they might go to our MRF, but then where do they go after that?
That's
And are they really being, I don't know the percentage of that. I don't know the answer to that question.
I just looked up your MRF on my list of what it accepts, and it's got plastic bottles and jugs, but then you've also got, it's funny because it just used the word container. This is such a confusion. Well, what's a container? I don't have it right here. I have this big, if you go to Aldi, or it's actually sold everywhere, these big pretzel containers, they come in PVC 3. Right? And that's actually so toxic if it gets recycled with PET. And that, I think your thing just says container. If someone puts that in a recycle bin, this is just like so bad. It's not even just like trash, it's like contamination. And then you've got clamshells on there. Where are those clamshells going? This is what you need to go ask your MRF. And we're trying to do this in California. There is a law that passed, but we have 75 MRFs, and MRFs have to report into a database and say, oh, we made this kind of bale, but it's hopeless. It's hopeless to track it here. But this is what you should actually do is, okay, you accept one of those things, show us where it goes. It's a fair transparency question.
And the bottom line is those clamshells can't go in your curbside. So to me, they're not readily recyclable. I think that's really the definition we need to be heading for. If it can't go in your curbside and it shows the little chasing arrow symbol, you know, there's a disconnect there, and it's false advertising. So you might be able to take it down to
acceptance list. They're actually on the acceptance list. So, but we're, and just so anyone knows, you can take a PET bottle and you can make a clamshell. You can't take a clamshell and make a PET bottle. So all the clamshells can be done is be collected and potentially made into carpet. But what typically happens is that in a PET bottle bale, they allow about 10% contamination of clamshells. So cities or states like Delaware could be telling, oh, get pressure, oh, accept clamshells. People want to recycle those. So they accept them. They go to the MRF. They may end up in contamination in the PET bottle bale, but when they get to a PET bottle recycler, then they get trashed.
Yeah, it's awesome. So Debbie, we obviously have more homework to do, but it's Sally. I know you had some questions. Did you want to unmute and ask them the ones that you put in the chat?
Well, yeah, I had 3 things. One was laundry detergent without a shrink wrap that's opaque, a colored yes or no. It looks like some of your things say yes, some of your things say no. Second question, Planet Money had a really good, they had a really good hour on this topic a while ago. And they said that one of the big problems is that there's no incentive for plastics companies to recycle because the original hydrocarbon based materials are so inexpensive. There's just no incentive whatsoever for recycling facilities to even, or for the plastics business to even research this. And then the third thing was, I've been on a tour a couple times of the recycling plant in Delaware, and it appears that what is taken is market driven, of course. So for a while, they'll have big stacks of paper in bales that are being warehoused, or they'll have big stacks of plastic that are bales that are being stacked. And they have a lot of just holding it until the market conditions are right. But I know aluminum is basically where they make their money.
Yeah, okay, so that's all true. So in the order, what was, sorry, the last one about, I'll go in reverse and you might have to remind me of the first question. Yes, so it's market driven, so that's good. the good news, so commodity prices are really high for aluminum. Oh my gosh, and it's gotten worse because of the Ukraine actually had a lot of aluminum facilities, as does Russia. So aluminum's really worthwhile. Cardboards, this gets into your second question. Actually, cardboard and paper have value again, which is good. It all crashed after when China stopped. There was like a disruption in the marketplace, but we actually need cardboard and paper back into the supply chain to make new tissue, to make new cardboard. Why? We're not suddenly growing trillions of new trees, right? So the recycling system, the material system for cardboard and paper actually really works. I think 70% of cardboard and paper is recycled in America today. 70, that's huge because, you know, of course, paper towels and toilet paper aren't going to be. So this is fantastic. So there is a real market. And what we've seen is that there's been like billions and billions of dollars of investment in new paper pulping and paper recycling mills in America, where you have water. You got to have water, and so that there is actually a circular economy of paper. Why? Because we need it back. Gets to your second question. There is no economic incentive to recycle any of this plastic. New plastic is cheaper. And here's an emerging issue that I'm really pushing on in California and other places. New plastic is actually safe. I mean, it might have some have some toxics that shouldn't be in it, but recycled plastic, the science is coming out every day. We've got toxins in recycled plastic. This big global group sampled 30 different HDPE recycled pellet samples around the world. All of them had toxics in it. Brominated, fluorinated, brominated things, UV stabilizers. This has a PVC label in it. This becomes benzene when it's recycled with the PET. It's horrible. So the food grade, you really can't make food grade. Maybe PET bottles who come from closed redemption deposit systems, but once it goes into a curbside bin, the plastic is contaminated from a toxics perspective of making food grade. So it's really expensive, it's really not safe, and now we're getting papers that microplastics are getting created from mechanical recycling. No surprise. So yeah, there and very few new plastic recyclers have opened in the last 4 years after China stopped, right? Some PET recyclers have, but no one else has. Why? It's a money loser. It's a money loser because new plastic is so cheap. And the first question was?
I was just asking about laundry jugs, detergent jugs, because I'm confused with some places saying yes and some places saying no. But another comment.
Yeah, they're good. I mean, an HDPE, so an HDPE laundry jug, if you try to buy one without the cutoff label, because we just don't want to support those guys. And there's plenty that don't have that label. Those are collected and then they're recycled into HDPE piping. And that's good. That's fine. That works. That's great.
Have you seen, there was a woman in, I think Kenya, who was I saw her profiled for making bricks for out of plastic that it seemed like it was just a compression thing. And then these bricks were being used for outside paving.
It's terrible. It's terrible. And it's toxic for her to be doing that. They're literally melting it and all the additives are coming out. Okay. And then second, the bricks are flammable. The plastic is so incredibly flammable, and there's people working to try to stop this. This is just a nightmare of what's happening, and the plastics industry is supporting it and so on. And then microplastics will get created from that as well. But it's toxics what she's doing, melting it, because all the VOCs and everything that come off, and then the plastic bricks themselves are so highly flammable they wouldn't be approved for in the US because we have laws that say you can't put a flammable brick somewhere, right?
And if I could ask you a question real quick, sorry, and then Stephanie, I see you have your hand up too. We are looking into truth in labeling legislation here in Delaware, and Maryland and New York already have bills that are underway. And Jan, obviously, talked about California's bill that was passed. Oregon has a task force underway, and I think Washington State also is in process, if not passed yet. But one of the things that I learned in researching this issue is sort of the, 30 years ago or whatever it was, when the industry got 30 or so states to require the chasing arrow resin symbols on packaging. And now, so when California was trying to pass its law, they came in and said, well, wait a minute, you can't do this law, because then, we'll be out of sync with all those other 30 states. We can't have different packaging for different states. And I just wonder what your thoughts are on, let's say Maryland, New York, and Delaware all pass those laws, and you guys out on the West Coast do as well. How do we answer that question if that concern is raised when we're proposing this legislation? I think there is a solution to it, but I'd love to hear what your thought is.
Well, of course, there's a solution. And I think the legislation that's getting considered in those other states may be based on the California legislation. And I'm not saying ours is perfect. It's very good though, and it requires taking off the chasing arrow symbols. Yeah. So, people I talk to here are communicating with people who are promoting policies back east, and it's going to be aligned. If it all uses a fair criteria, it's going to come down to ones and twos, bottles and jugs, period. I mean, the data is there. That's all it's going to be.
The packaging companies will say, well, but Pennsylvania still requires the chasing arrows. You don't. So how are we going to handle that?
Well, there absolutely are ways. And oh my God, these businesses can do anything. Have you seen their Super Bowl ads? Come on, they can do anything. I'll tell you what we do. Like in California, we have a bottle deposit law where it has to say, and I don't know if you do in Delaware, but anyway, on here, it has to say what the deposit value is. And so what the companies do sometimes is they put a sticker on it. So I would imagine the solution is going to be they make product runs. They do make product runs regionally, just so that if like bottlers for Pepsi or whatever, they're all in different regions, in the same way for Ocean Spray Cranberry and what have you. So I think that they make them regionally, and that they're going to make a standard label without it, and then add a label if they still have to in states. That's what I think. And that's completely doable. Is it a tiny cost for them? Yes, but tough luck, because they have to be compliant with state laws.
Yeah.
And I hope that other states will follow suit. And I hope the other states will follow suit.
That's what I'm thinking. In the bottle deposit labeling, you'll see, like, do this in Pennsylvania and Maryland, and over here it's 15 cents, and over here in these states it's 10 cents or whatever. So they have figured out how to do it for those laws, and I think they could figure it out for these laws too. Anyway, Stephanie, why don't you jump in with your question?
I haven't looked at the chat because I can't multitask because I'm looking at you guys. So if there's any questions in the chat you wanted to ask me, just ask me.
Okay, yes. I live in Santa Fe, and I've been a member of a group called El Dorado 285 Recycles, which started decades ago. Now it's kind of an embarrassing name, but we have some members of our group who have actually taken the Judith Ank Plastics class from Bennington College. And we have a group of people who are really interested in moving New Mexico forward. We're going to take yet another tour of our local MRF on Monday. And we have a lot of questions. We've seen the big bales of combined materials stacked in our MRF. And there is sort of a lack of transparency about what's going on. We have a local recycler, Town Recycling, who has the contract for Santa Fe County Recycling. And they have told us that these big bales of mixed materials, which do include, we've seen like crushed cans as well as paper and plastic in these big bales. They've told us that these bales, they've found a market for these big mixed bales in Mexico, and they make egg cartons out of them. So that was a couple of years ago that we heard that, before COVID. And now we're going to have a new tour on Monday. but we just don't believe what they're telling us. And Santa Fe still will take clamshells and all sorts of containers. So we're trying to get a county bag ban. In Albuquerque, they have rescinded the bag ban due to COVID, and that just seems sort of like low-hanging fruit that's depressing that we probably can't get through anyway. So we're trying to figure out what's the best direction to go. In one way, I want to write a letter to the editor of the local newspaper and say we've been lied to and tell them about all this, but then people are not going to recycle. And I just don't know. We're so frustrated. What do you suggest?
Well, I'm looking at my list and I see that Buckman Road Recycling and Transfer they only accept plastic bottles and jugs. That's what I've got. I'm going to click this up.
Yeah, but if you look at SWAMA, I think it is the Santa Fe, there's a lot of discrepancies.
Okay. Yeah. Oh yeah. Okay. So I see, they only show bottles, and this is where it's so rinky-dink. This is where we really just have to bring facts and some sort of professionalism to this. They say, oh, we collect plastics, and then they show a picture of bottles and jugs, right? And all these acceptance lists are also like, I'm sorry, they're so kindergarten in so many places where they just go, oh, plastic, and then they sort of have a picture of something. We just need to get really specific. And so they say they currently don't accept plastic bags or styrofoam. Yeah, I can see that it looks like they're promoting more. Same thing as Delaware. You go in and you talk to the MRF and you say, show us exactly who is buying it. Show us the name of the company. And then I may know it. If they're good, I'll tell you they're good. And if they go, oh, it's made into an eggshell in Mexico. No, you shouldn't be exporting anything to Mexico. Okay. That is not, it's actually illegal. Just so you know, it's technical, but it is illegal to export to Mexico based on the OECD and Basel rules and American law and so on. But exporting to Mexico pollutes their country, period. We are shipping, if it's not recyclable in America. I have a whole presentation on plastic waste exports if you guys want to do that. I did that with the California Recycling Commission yesterday to read California's the Riot Act of what's happening. I have gotten one major shipping line to stop shipping it, but it's all trucking from California, New Mexico, down to Mexico. You need to go in there and ask them, okay, why are you accepting any of this? Why are you accepting clamshells? Where exactly are they going? Oh, they're going to Mexico. Show us the factory. Show us their environmental rules. Show us their water scarcity. There's a PET thermoform recycler in Ciudad Juarez, across from El Paso. There's no water there, but they're getting water, right? So they're taking it away from people, right? And plastic recycling takes a lot of water because you have to remember that these recyclers, like they go and set up in Mexico, they're business people. Okay, they're trying to make a profit on this stuff. They're trashing the contamination wherever. They're getting the water source. They're hiring very cheap labor to try to sort stuff out. And once again, we can't recycle in America because we have environmental rules, we have water rights, we have water costs, we have energy costs. And so we export and pretend it's plastic. It's all about the traceability of where it goes. If it's not being responsibly recycled in America, it shouldn't be accepted.
So would you, for a group like us, would you focus on truth in labeling laws in the legislature? We're sort of thinking
probably not. No, I think that I would actually, for your group in Santa Fe, I would focus on the plastic bag law. I do know what happened in Albuquerque. I watched it get rescinded, but I think I would, hopefully the Santa Fe community or at your jurisdiction of making a rule like that would be more amenable. And I think that would be number one to start. And then number two would be to go to Buckman and say, and then just start putting pressure on them, because when you put pressure on them and say, no, we don't want you to accept this if it's not recyclable, because they're raising your rates. Putting something into a recycle cart and having it processed costs way more than just sending it to landfill. And if that item is just going to get sent to landfill anyway, you've now like doubled the cost. So if it's a trash item, it should go straight to landfill. In fact, Buckman could be making more money off of contamination. There's a dirty little secret. When the recyclers accept all this stuff and then they get paid more for processing the blue bin, but then, oh, there's no market. And then they send it to landfill where they get paid for landfill as way. They've just made more money off of you.
Jan, I don't think Greg is still on here. Greg, if you are, chime in, but I think he might have logged off. But he put a question in the chat that says, don't companies have to join howtorecycle.info in order to have a label put on their product? So no, that is a group, an NGO that got set up, and they haven't filed an IRS form in 6 years. So this is funded by the plastics industry, funded by the products industry. They set themselves up to put like this one, to do this. So if a company wants to put this big label on there, then they have to pay that group to get approved for a label, and then they get to put the label on. But there's no legal requirement to have that. They could, other products just say, like on a PET bottle, please recycle me. You can just do that. So in fact, we're making these labels illegal in California. That's what SB 343 will do. They won't be able to do this anymore. And that was a big motivator for me, because they're slapping that check locally, recycle symbol, check locally on everything that's not recyclable. So companies are using this program to stick this label on, which is basically marketing and advertising, because they know consumers care. And yes, companies have to pay this group. They're a nonprofit who makes a crap load of money off of doing this, right? And those labels are a huge problem. And there's a lawsuit right now, Greenpeace versus Walmart, which gets tied up in the courts, not on the technical arguments, but on the standing of, does Greenpeace have a right to sue Walmart because they actually weren't deceived? It's really sad. The labels are clearly wrong, but the lawsuit gets held up because of, oh, well, do they have the right to sue though? Anyway, it's really, most of that whole lawsuit is about these how to recycle labels, which Walmart is the leader in promoting. Okay, I know we're running over. I don't know if Jan minds, but I'm trying to work my way through the chat. I know there were some questions out there. Does anyone want to jump in? There was one I was trying to find, sorry.
While we wait, I think for both Delaware and like Santa Fe or anywhere in the country, what concerned people should do is go to their city and then their MRF. A lot of times the city drives it. The city wants to look green and accept all these things, and say, for anything that's not a 1 or a 2 bottle and jug, say, why are we accepting this? Exactly where is it going?
So for us, again, the maybe easier thing is that we're totally statewide.
Right.
So it's
I agree.
It's not by city, it's not by county, it's the state. So simple state legislation can take care of the whole state together, because we have one MRF and everybody's under the same law.
It would actually, I don't know if you can get some law that says they can only accept, basically our law in California for the recyclability thing now is it can only be called recyclable if there's somebody if a MRF is gonna separate it and someone's gonna buy it. But one you could do is a transparency law that says that MRF has to report all of the bales sold and where they go. Exactly where they go, not that they're sent to a broker. Brokers get involved. This is what's happened in the past. Your broker, your MRF might be selling it to the broker. Broker says, oh, I have a good market. And the MRF goes, great, take it, get rid of it, buy it, take it, get rid of it. And then they'll say, oh no, we're told we have a good market. And no one knows where it goes. It could go to Senegal. You're on the East Coast. There's a lot of plastic waste going to Asia, more and more going to Africa, because it's cheaper than landfilling, and also because cities want to pretend it's and states want to pretend it's recycled.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think they shouldn't be allowed to put the chasing arrow symbol on anything that can't go in your curbside bin, period. And then,
right.
and then those things have to have a market in the
right.
states, right?
Yes.
So
starting to ask those questions is what we need to do. They've never had the questions asked. It's always been a trust me. It's always been, oh, put it in the blue bin, it's recycled. It's like the traceability. I actually worked in supply chain traceability with Nike and Gap and Mattel, who made Barbies back in the 90s. I was like a pioneer. Where did Barbie's hair come from? What factory? Was there child labor? So we did this whole like traceability back. Now we need the traceability on the other end. If product companies are telling us it's recyclable, if your MRF in your city or state are saying put it in the blue bin, we need to know exactly where it goes. Is it going to an incinerator? Are the plastics being pulled off? And is it going, you have incinerators on the East Coast, it could be going there.
yeah. I have not looked at the DSW report but like with that in mind. So I need to go back and probably circle back to you to get your help to do that.
I'm happy to help. I'm happy to help. I think Delaware is it's very manageable, right? And you can go and ask those questions and say, we just want to know the facts and the truth. That's it.
Yeah. Yeah.
You can't
exactly.
say, oh, it's proprietary. Oh, we can't tell you. No, this is a public, public pays into it. There should be absolute transparency. Picked up, what pulp mill does it go to? The pulping is all going to be good on the East Coast. You have pulpers back there. We have to export our paper here because we don't have water, so we can't have pulping machines, paper recycling. Metals is going to be good. Glass is complicated. I can't even talk about glass. I don't even know what glass is so complicated. But all the rest of them are going to have a domestic market for you. But where does the plastic go? So I'm happy to collaborate with you guys on this in the future.
We so appreciate it. Thanks. I guess there have been a couple questions in the chat about sort of, sorry, we'll maybe close on this because I know you probably have to go, but sort of what we think might happen at the federal level versus all these state actions. And, I know the state actions help bring along the federal changes, but I don't know, I guess just your thoughts on kind of how the two parallel paths there.
So on this topic, states are allowed to make a tighter law, right? There's some kind of federal laws where states can't, the federal laws preempt states. Other types of laws, not even voting rights, but other types of laws, maybe the draft, I don't know, but there's some laws, the feds say it, that's it. But on these sorts of laws, states can make tighter rules. And so actually, I think that our rule that's come into effect is probably tighter in California than what they might do, because traditionally on recycling issues, the national government has been very weak. The EPA right now is so weak. They are so weak on recycling. I'd say it's like 1970 called and wants their plan back. There's no waste minimization, barely. They don't even publish, their last data they published was 2018. That should be a crime. We don't even have new data. So I don't expect the federal laws to be very tough. Hopefully they'll be tougher than they are now. But there's strong lobbyists, strong industry lobbyists. You're going to try to keep them weak with a lot of wiggle room. If California's laws have the effect we want to, which would be really ones and twos, bottles and jugs, until something's really established as a market, hopefully it'll impact all the labels and in the right way across the country. And if your state's up there do something similar, that should have a knock-on effect for you as well.
Okay, sorry, Cheryl, last question, Cheryl put in the chat, what would be the best material to make containers from and to replace plastic? I guess obviously it kind of depends maybe on what's being contained.
Right. So, you know, if when we're talking about single-use things like snacks and stuff like that, that's not a container. But like this, I'm a big fan of paper. I've talked to the paper people, the forest people who like to protect forests, and they say forest certified. It's fine. There's so much paper used in cardboard boxes. If you change all the snack packaging to this, like it doesn't make a dent. Containers for things like these. This is tough. I actually think that what PET and HDPE are recyclable, but when they start getting into these smaller containers, and if you have food contamination, oh, it's tough. I mean, this sounds too idealistic, but people should buy these in larger containers and put little bits and reusables for their kids' school lunches. You know, I think that's what these are for, right? So what to replace these with? I think if this is a tough one, it's very liquid. There's really good fiber coming out though. So this is the toughest one. Let's hold that one aside. There's really good fiber coming out. A company called Footprint in Arizona. They were started by Intel engineers. They're now making fiber bowls with a plant-based coating, not a bioplastic, but it's a micro coating to replace plastic bowls in frozen food containers. Like if you go into the store, ConAgra is using them. They help develop them for like Hungry Man meals. They're really cool. They're paper fiber and they're compostable and they're recyclable. So I'm a huge fan of doing paper. If we talk about like water bottles, of course we should just try to use less water bottles. Beverage bottles are tough. If we're going to keep having beverages, just clear PET is the way to go.
Okay. Well, it's well past 1:15, which we try to stop before we go too long. So Jan, we can't thank you enough. This has been fascinating. Oh, it's been great. You're so inspiring and informative.
Go get them on the East Coast, you guys. Go get them out back there. That's what we got to do. Look, little me. Whoops, little me can have an impact. You guys can have it. You already are. You got your backlog pass. We all can have an impact, right? We can do it because we have the truth on our side.
To be continued. Everyone that's on our email list, will keep you posted on how things move forward over the coming months. And please become advocates and support this. Write your state legislators and let them know you want to see these changes. So before you do anything else today, send them an email.
Thanks,
okay,
guys.
Again, thank you. Have a great day. Thanks everybody for being here.
Bye.
Bye.